Thank you for joining us for day 2 of the 2022 Hawaii Early College convening. All right, to get things started, I'm honored to introduce our wonderful session speakers who are logging in all the way from Kentucky. Both women serve very important roles at the Kentucky Council of Postsecondary Education, and we're so happy they're here to join us. Let's give a warm welcome to Amanda Ellis, Vice President of K-12 Policies and Programs, and Robin Habert, Senior Fellow of P20 Policies and Partnerships. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having us. We are so honored to be here, and we are going to share our screen to get started today. I'm Amanda Ellis from the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and I have my colleague here with me, Robin Habert. And hopefully you are able to see your screen. Lindsay, if you can confirm that. Perfect.
There we go.
So today we're going to be talking about our collaborative approach in Kentucky for expanding early college access and attainment. Just to be clear, in Kentucky, what we really offer, or what we call it, is dual credit. It's where students are dually enrolled in college courses for college credit, as well as earning high school credit to meet the high school graduation requirements. So just so you know where we're from, it is morning for you all, but it is late afternoon for us. We're located in Frankfort, Kentucky, which is central Kentucky. And you can see Robin's pictures that she had taken before. This is just a snippet of the colors we're seeing right now in Kentucky in fall. I know you all probably have amazing weather and warm weather, and we're starting to have to add more layers. And so it is just a pleasure to be with you today and to share just a part of our journey and the work that we're doing currently. So our agenda today, we're going to be talking just very briefly about the Kentucky Commonwealth Education Continuum. It is our P20 council that I know Hawaii has. We'll be talking a little bit about that and where this work came from. The creation and launch of our Kentucky Advising Academy, the Kentucky proposed statewide access and attainment goal for dual credit, and the access and attainment audit process. We want to give you some things that are takeaways that hopefully you can implement in your own systems. And then the work around our early post-secondary opportunity toolkit, which of course in education we all have to have our acronym, so we call it EPSO. Part of the work that we're doing around this really is around our North Star of the 60 by 30 goal. So 60% of working Kentuckians will have a credential or degree of value. We really are trying to promote economic mobility for our citizens and really for improved quality of life for all of Kentucky, for our families and our youngest folks. We also, at the Council on Post-Secondary Education, are also driven around the foundation of equity. And part of our definition around that is creating opportunities for historically underserved student populations to increase access to educational opportunities. And we really would even add success. And so part of that, what we're working on today and talking to you about, is around our dual credit, as we said, our early post-secondary opportunities with an emphasis on dual credit. So the work around where we started with this is the Commonwealth Education Continuum. As we said before, that is our P20 Council. The P20 Council or Continuum is not legislatively required, nor is it a standalone, but it is an intentional collaboration that is co-led by 3 co-leads. It is our president on the Council for Post-Secondary Education, Dr. Aaron Thompson, who oversees our public institutions, 2-year and 4-year institutions, and accredits all post-secondary institutions in the state. Our Commissioner of Education for the Kentucky Department of Education, Commissioner Jason Glass. And then also our Lieutenant Governor, Jacqueline Coleman, is very much a proponent and an educator. And so all 3 of them, as busy as they are committed to co-leading this amazing collaboration in our continuum. There are 28 members who represent preschool all the way through K-12, our post-secondary folks, and into the workforce. We have students, we have a parent representative, teachers, faculty, you name it, we have it, and they're represented, legislators. And it really provides a different perspective. And the goal of the continuum really started almost getting ready to start our 3rd year, 2 years ago, with the intention of increasing and strengthening our education pipeline for all students. And the area in which we focused on initially was really the transition point from secondary to post-secondary. We absolutely could not do this work without two additional partners outside of our state, which is the College and High School Alliance, which has really been a huge support on our dual credit work, and our Education Strategy Group, who has been our incredible thought partner over the last 2 years to help develop and put this into fruition. When we got into this work, what we knew we wanted to do was not just come up with ideas in an isolated group, even of 28 folks, but we really wanted to capture the voices and the lived experiences of Kentuckians from all different regions of our state. And so that was our commitment that we had put into action. And so the work that we have done around this is really around stakeholder engagement. So the Education Strategy Group, in collaboration with the Council on Postsecondary Education, we held a series of interviews and focus groups with various stakeholders, students, counselors, teachers, parents, post-secondary faculty, workforce, and we really were asking about the transition point from secondary into post-secondary and where we lose students and where we don't have full representation. And we coordinated with our 8 cooperatives, education cooperatives. They are the trusted resources and sources in our state that really represent the regions of our state. They're very diverse in makeup, needs, opportunities, and access to different institutions of higher education, our industry and businesses. It's varied across our state. So we wanted to capture the lived experiences of each of those. Most of them are rural, but 2 areas specifically are urban, predominantly urban. So it was really important for us to capture those voices. We had a total of the first year of 166 individuals who participated in focus groups or individual interviews, and we captured really what was needed to develop recommendations in the interests, needs, and challenges experienced by our community specific to those transition points. What that did is that drove us into 3 working groups that we dove deeper, and we had more stakeholder feedback and participation in these 3 areas in the first year: early post-secondary opportunities, educator workforce and diversity, and successful transition to post-secondary work groups. What was predominant in that work that we saw, not only from the state level data that we are incredibly blessed to have a very robust longitudinal data system in Kentucky that provides quantitative data, longitudinal, and then the focus groups provided the qualitative data of the stories behind the data, the why. We decided to really narrow in on the state levers around these areas of improvement. Specifically in early post-secondary opportunities, since that's our focus area of today, these were 3 of the main recommendations, and we actually had suggested actions that came after these. But you can see these, and actually this is the order in which they were prioritized by our continuum. And this is the number 1, if you'll really focus in on, is to ensure every high school student has access to at least 1 early post-secondary opportunity and the support to successfully complete the course, particularly those students and families who have been traditionally underrepresented in early post-secondary opportunities. So part of that work was really identifying that we only had about 17% of our high school students engaged, enrolled in our early post-secondary opportunities. And Robin will be sharing some data and information with you of what's already accessible. But we knew that that number certainly was not representative of our student body, nor did it represent the student populations that we have represented in Kentucky. There was quite the disparity with our low-income students and with underrepresented minority students, as well as males, if you look at our data. And so we knew we had work to do. And that we really, in order to increase this access, there had to be some pieces that went into it. You'll also notice that increased state funding to cover the cost of early post-secondary opportunities for all students, including equity grants for low and middle income students and families. That recommendation was actually suggested and derived from our student representatives who served on the work groups and the continuum. And you can see that the next one was strengthen local and regional partnerships among high schools, institutions, and workforce to expand access, advising, and support to early post-secondary opportunities. So there was a real need around awareness, around access to this, and to really dig deeply into what our policy said and what resources were available to make this happen. The financial piece was a nice caveat because we already currently have the dual credit scholarship, which provide 2 courses of academic courses to our juniors or seniors that everyone has access to, as well as multiple career and technical education dual credit courses that are available at no cost to the students. If they go beyond that, there's a subsidized tuition rate, which is half the cost of our community college rate for an in-state student. While that has increased by 75% over the past 5 years, we still do not represent well our student populations that make up our Kentucky schools, our public schools. So we have work to do. You'll also notice that a lot of the conversation or the recommendations really focused around opportunities, not just for the students, but family awareness too. And so advising continued to elevate over and over as a need in our state. And so we did something about that. So we were able to secure some ARPA dollars with all of the incredible COVID relief funding that was granted to our Kentucky Department of Education. They did provide funding around this, as well as our governor provided some GEAR dollars to help create an advising academy. And this advising academy is not serving students on the ground. We didn't have enough people for this or enough time. But what we did consider is sustainability of this once funding goes away. And so what we have done is we have created a statewide post-secondary advising effort that provides free, comprehensive professional learning and resources to our P-12 school counselors and educators who are in advising roles or who may be supported. This may be teachers, this could be advisors, social workers who are in the building. We have youth service centers in our buildings who provide support to families and students. And it's really engaging them in building their capacity around advising strategies. We have been really intentional with marketing and getting the word out by partnering with our Kentucky Higher Education Authority assistance that provides financial assistance for higher ed. We have worked with our higher ed advisors, and they are included in this academy. So this is not just to provide professional learning just for P-12, but it is also to intentionally connect our P-12 partners with our post-secondary advisors and first-year experience folks to really start sharing common language, common concerns, because we are sharing students. And it's really to be intentional with the conversation going on and how we can increase the support through that transition and not lose as many students. We have content development and feedback through collaboration. There's a design team that helps drive the needs, and we share resources. So we are continuously providing podcasts, webinars, knowing that there are no subs, or very few in Kentucky. I don't know if you're facing the same issues in Hawaii, but it is a challenge to lead the schools. But we do have 2 face-to-face meetings and provide online support and regional support as well for these adults to really start rebuilding our college and career culture. We're also investing in a partnership with One Goal that also invests in the time and capacity building of our school and district leaders to start rebuilding that college and career culture as we start a new normal coming out of COVID and really meeting students' needs and their family needs of where they are. And so at this time, I'm going to be able to hand it over to my colleague and partner in crime, I would say, to really help dig into the work we're doing around dual credit. So Robin, I'm going to turn to you.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. So I wanted to start the conversation about what we've done around dual credit by sharing a little bit of data. Our work, as Amanda said, is largely driven by equity, and we'll discuss that a little bit more later on. But suffice to say for now that what we're the strategies that we're trying to put into place in Kentucky are really our attempt to address what we consider to be a moral imperative around expanding access and success for students who have been historically underserved. And I suspect that our population demographics differ from the population demographics in Hawaii, but I would imagine that we share a similar goal, and that is to make educational attainment and educational opportunity kind of the normal for all students and not just ones who have always had access. So the data that you see on the screen comes from our Kentucky Educational Opportunity Report from Kentucky's school report card, annual school report card produced by the Kentucky Department of Education. And this is just a little bit of the data that is included in that report, but you can see here that too many of Kentucky's students currently do not have access or have success in dual credit or other early post-secondary opportunities. So I'll give you a chance just to take a quick look at the data that you see there on the screen. So Amanda has mentioned how our Kentucky has been working with the College and High School Alliance, and they have really helped us to think about how to expand access to early post-secondary opportunities. And specific to dual credit, the College and High School Alliance has helped us to develop a plan of action that includes 4 phases or 4 cycles. And at the heart of this entire process is just an intensive focus on data review, as well as cycles of stakeholder input and feedback. So these have just been constants throughout our entire journey. So I'll just quickly go through the different phases and kind of what we do or what we have done in each one of those. In phase 1, there was a real focus on reviewing data. And as Amanda said, we're very privileged to have a massive data system in Kentucky. The Kentucky Center for Statistics, which we call KY Stats, have really helped us and been wonderful partners in providing data around Kentucky's dual credit programs. And so what it's allowed us to do is examine existing realities, future, past realities, and then to really dig into areas of challenge. Because without doing that, it's impossible for us to develop an idea of where we want to go. And so the review of data has been a key piece of our process. So in addition to reviewing data, phase 2 included developing a vision for dual credit. And when I first heard about this, I thought, developing a vision for dual credit, we already know what it is and what it does. But in partnership with the CHSA, we've really worked to develop a clear understanding of the why behind dual credit in our state. And I've come to learn that the why in different states could be a very different story. We want to identify our why so that then we can build a goal and a system that can really support that vision. So developing the vision during phase 2 was really, really important. And CHSA has really helped us to see those connections between how a clearly defined goal can help us to identify the most important metrics that we're trying to push forward, and also to develop a policy and resources that help us get there. And so what we're working toward is just a really tight system that helps us get where we want to go with dual credit. So this clear and consensus vision across all of our stakeholder groups is helping us to determine and talk about this comfortable place where dual credit will sit in our education system long term. So it's helped us to get really specific about the goals for dual credit, the populations that we want to go after at this time, and the ideal dual credit experience for students. Like, what do we want dual credit to produce for them or to help them achieve? That was a really important part of the process. Phase 3 is the goal setting piece, and it's really been amazing to me how when we have phase 1 and phase 2 in pretty good shape, phase 3 became easy. I was very surprised that we would have such agreement and consensus, but I think it's because after we went through all the data and we went through all of our stakeholder input, the path forward for setting the goal just became very clear for us. And so it's been wonderful how much our stakeholders have been in agreement about what our goals should be. We'll get to that in just a little bit. And then finally, in phase 4, we're going to be working on integrating this goal into our Kentucky dual credit policy, and then the resources that we're going to build to support that. And so we're really asking 3 questions in phase 4, which is, how does dual credit and the dual credit policy kind of live in the ecosystem of early post-secondary opportunities? Because we've had a lot of conversations along the way about how is this different from what AP offers or does for students? How is this different from what IB does or offers to students? And so we're thinking hard about where does dual credit sit? What does it do for us? We've we've thought a lot also about just the tone of our dual credit policy, and is it accessible, and is it inviting to all the stakeholders and partners who we want to be part of the ecosystem, and does it promote buy-in among all of our stakeholder groups? All right, so we had a plan for how we wanted to go about this work around dual credit. So I'm going to share with you now some of what came out of these different phases of work. So when we have been working with our stakeholders and looking at our data, these are some of the things that kind of bubbled up to the top. I thought it might be helpful for you to see some of the notes and some of the decisions that we've made so far. So we're in agreement in Kentucky that we want our high school students to have the opportunity to have meaningful college and career experiences in high school. We want them to have support while they're having those experiences so that they can experience success. And we also really have a vision that dual credit will help them manage the cost of a college degree or a credential, and or help them shorten that time to degree or completion of degree or completion of credential. And you can see how that would work. We've been surprised to kind of hear some of our students talk about other benefits that dual credit has provided for them, such as giving them a little wiggle room in their schedule so that they can adjust to that first semester in college when they're on campus, or when they're trying to balance work life and college life and all the things that go along with that transition. So these are just some of the high level goals that as a state we've agreed to. When we think about how we've defined in Kentucky who dual credit is for, this sounds pretty easy and straightforward to say that all students should have the opportunity to participate. But we're very aware that if we want to normalize a dual credit experience for students, that it's not that easy. We'll need to be reaching down into middle school and helping those students learn about and understand what it means to be prepared for dual credit. Because if they plan to take dual credit courses but aren't eligible, then we've missed a really wonderful opportunity. So we're really committed to creating this culture in Kentucky where college readiness is just the norm, that there's an expectation that our students are going to seek some kind of degree or credential, and that it's possible for them to achieve those goals. And so we want to make sure that if students want that experience, that it's available to them, and that they can follow that dream if that's what they choose. Okay. So we've also had a lot of conversation around, okay, so if we want a lot of students to have this experience, what would a really great dual credit experience look like for those students? And we've really come to realize that students will benefit most when dual credit programs reflect truly authentic partnerships between high schools and our area technology centers and institutions of higher education. Because we can't do any of what you see on the screen there if those partnerships are not authentic. Students need really personalized plans that include support services from the high school and from the institution of higher education, and they can't be effective if they're done in silos. And so we're really promoting collaboration and partnership for all of the dual credit experiences that students could have. And again, I'm just going to go back to that idea of a culture of college going and college belonging among high school students. That's really what we're trying to create, whether it takes place on the high school campus, the college campus, or even online. Our wonderful partner from CHSA, Alex Perry, puts it this way. He says dual credit should be as normalized and accepted for a high school student as going to the prom. So we want them to be thinking about it and planning for it and having a sense of expectation for it or anticipation for it in the same way that they might feel about prom. And finally, we really value affordability. We do not want money to be the reason why any student doesn't take advantage of a dual credit course. So our legislature has been extremely supportive, and we have a lot of community partners, civic partnerships that really help to manage the cost of dual credit, both locally and at our state level. And we're really grateful for that. So there's what we've kind of come up with about the ideal dual credit experience. Of course, quality and rigor are always a challenge, but our institutions of higher education are very on board with trying to keep that level of quality and rigor high. We also want to make sure that when students do take dual credit courses, that they're highly transferable, especially if they stay in state, that we can have some leverage around the coursework being transferable, and that it really counts toward the degree or credential that the student really wants to have. All right, so I know this is the big moment that many of you have been waiting for. This is where we're going to talk a little bit about the dual credit attainment goal. So following the creation of our vision and then clarifying what the ideal experience for students, we were ready to draft our dual credit attainment goal. And initially, it included only the bold section that you see at the top of the screen. But we really wanted to emphasize this notion of equity. And so after a lot of talk and conversation, we added the second section that you see there on the screen. And as you can see, it's still a work in progress. We have some blanks to fill in still, but we did land on the 2030 date because of CPE's 60 by 30 goal that Amanda alluded to earlier. We're still debating about what that percentage should be. I'm sure we all have our ideas about what it should be, but we'll just have to get back to you on that part because we don't have that quite finished up. But our dual credit attainment goal is that by 2030, a certain to be determined percentage of Kentucky high school students should graduate high school having completed at least one dual credit course with a qualifying grade of a C or higher. And we're going to talk a little bit now about where those ideas really came from or what they're built upon. So, as we started to talk about so much about our data and our stakeholder feedback, it was really related to strategies that we'll use to achieve our goal. And so in our conversations, we realized that it's not just the what that we're after, which is the dual credit success and access, but it's also about the how, that how we go about trying to achieve that goal will have a lot of influence on getting to what we really want. And so there are quite a few strategies that we have for achieving our dual credit attainment goal, but we wanted to share these two because they really articulate and get to our intent around equity and our statewide belief that more dual credit coursework is not exactly what we're after. And in some states, maybe that is what they're after, that they want a lot of students to earn 30 or 40 or, credit hours or even an associate's degree before they graduate. And, that can be wonderful for some students. But what we've noticed in Kentucky is that that's not really what we want most from our dual credit experiences. And so these two strategies to expand access and success among students with little or no current access to dual credit really emphasizes that we want to make dual credit available to students who don't already have it. The ones who already have access, they're going to continue to have access. And it's not that we want to pull back from that or give them less access, but we really want to expand into areas where students don't currently have access. And then we also want to expand access to early post-secondary opportunities as a whole. So our dual credit attainment goal in no way is meant to sort of steal students from advanced placement or IB or other early post-secondary opportunities that they're already taking advantage of, because there are many wonderful benefits that they get from those other early post-secondary opportunities. So we're trying to be really thoughtful about how we message dual credit versus advanced placement versus IB coursework so that students can see the benefits, the process, and what is required or expected of them in all of these different early post-secondary opportunities. So it's really been about expanding access so that more students, especially those underserved, have the opportunity to experience and succeed in a meaningful dual credit course. We want them to believe that they're college material. We want them to have that experience and feel successful and put them on the path toward a degree or credential that can make all the difference in their lives. So for us, it's been really helpful to articulate the why, our vision, the what, the goal, and then also the how. What types of strategies will we put in place that are very aligned to where we want to go with dual credit? Okay, so I'm going to loop back now to the data slide for dual credit participation because I wanted to just mention that as a state agency, we do realize that our ambitious goal won't happen just because we set a goal. We really have to have buy-in and participation from all of our stakeholders across our state, including at the local level. And so when we revisited Kentucky's school report card for statewide participation, we know that if these disparities exist at the state level, they also exist at the local level, at the district level, and at the school level. And so as an agency, as a state agency, we realize that we're responsible to help support local efforts to expand access and success. We can't just say, this is what we want you to do. We've got to provide some support and resources to help them get there. So in collaboration with the Kentucky Advising Academy and the Professional Learning Series that has been going on, our team developed a process that we call an access and attainment audit for our local school districts so that they could actually look at their own school report card that looks very much like the state report card, only it has their local data, and they could drill down into that local data and audit their current reality related to dual credit. And so, considering how surprised we've been at our data and the stakeholder input that we have received along this journey, we shouldn't have been surprised, but we were when we found out how little many of our schools and districts knew about where they were when it came to dual credit data. So a big takeaway and sort of cautionary tale for all of us is to just keep going back to data. Go back to data and trust your data. Go back to stakeholder input and keep going back to stakeholder input because we're just learning that too often our hunches are driving our decision making. We think we know what the student barriers are, but then when we actually talk to students, we find out that we really didn't know all or some of the things that were barriers. So we're really trying to keep that in mind here at CPE as we do our work. We're very committed to data collection and analysis and continuing to prioritize that stakeholder input at every step of the way. So one of the things that we decided to do was to provide some support around helping schools and districts look at their data and sort of audit what their current reality was. So researchers have defined equity as fair access to and distribution of resources and power and opportunities. Educational equity is achieved when all learners are able to participate fully in quality learning experiences. And we believe dual credit to be a quality learning experience. And so that has really driven a lot of our thinking around this. So an equity audit is defined as an internal review of the policies and practices to identify those that are failing to serve your underrepresented students. And so that's basically what we want to do is look at our data and see, are some of our students not having access? And if they are, why? So we are investigating dual credit right now, but certainly there would be a lot of other educational issues that you might use the same process to look at. So during the fall professional learning series with the Kentucky Advising Academy, we were traveling all around the state. We provided the opportunity for schools and districts to begin to to do what we call an access and attainment audit. So they would access their own local educational opportunity data, just like what we shared with you from the state, only you can ask the KDE report card to tell you just about your school or your district, and then to answer a couple of simple questions just to get started that you see here on the slide. So they're looking at their data and they're thinking about which student groups are not currently taking dual credit courses, who's not there, and which student groups are not successfully completing or receiving credit in dual credit coursework. Because these two questions we felt like were really going to point to barriers that are in place and also some of the policies or practices that we have or don't have that might lead to student success.
And I will jump in,
Yeah,
Robin, if
please.
it's okay, this is a really powerful tool that you could do today, as Robin said, with a lot of topics, because it's not comparing yourselves to anyone, but your own data from your school or your institution or however you're organized, because it really is a deep dive into your own policies and beliefs. What we have found is when a lot of our rural districts may say, well, I don't really have student diversity. And Robin used to always say, well, is there a gap? Is there an achievement gap? Maybe it's between male and female. It could be with students with disabilities and those not identified with disabilities. It could be lots of different things, your English language learners. There's lots of student populations that folks tend to overlook sometimes. Mm-hmm. And when you deep dive into your own outcomes, your own data, and then start to look at your local policy or your school level decisions and how they're made, it really starts to tell the story of why. And I think this is why it's really important that you aren't comparing yourselves to other schools or you get to compare yourself to yourself and really do a deep dive into your beliefs versus practices and policies that really tell a story that's just being really honest and starts the process of changing behavior, of changing what we do and really thinking about how we advise, how we encourage students to take advantage of these opportunities, because many that we hear from when we talk to students, they'll say, well, I'm not college material. I can't do that work. And in fact, some of them are maybe in a career pathway that they are doing trigonometry, but they say, I hate math. And so they are really capable. There are lots of students who are capable of advanced coursework and these opportunities that don't feel worthy, and their parents aren't even sure what it is because they're not engaged early and often. And so we have a lot of areas that we're working on specifically that really caused us to do a deep dive at a state level, but then we're really encouraging our districts and our individual schools to do a deep dive into their own practices, beliefs, and their data.
Right. So after they started this initial deep dive, as Amanda said, then we asked them to think about what barriers are in the way in your local context. And so Kentucky is a very diverse state just geographically. And so some of the areas of the state have a lot of access to institutions of higher education. In fact, some high schools even have a career and technical center right next door where students can walk or have easy access to be in person. And some of them really have struggles when it comes to having teachers who are credentialed to teach a dual credit course. And so there are lots of reasons why these barriers exist, and they vary from local context to local context. So they were asked to start talking about these questions, and it was amazing to see the kinds of conversations that they started to have. The conversations just blew up, and we might say, we'll give you 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get started, and they wanted more time because it was almost like they were seeing this data for the very first time, having the very first opportunity to just sit and talk with their colleagues about why it might exist. So in addition to the two questions that you see on the screen, we also asked them to think about what are some of the barriers that you think are in place in your local community that are causing some of these disparities. And then instead of asking them to come up with a plan of action, which is often what we end up with, when we're having a work session like this, the last big ask that we had of these groups was to come up with an intentional plan, not to remove the barriers, not to solve the problems, but an intentional plan to hear from their key stakeholders. We said, you've got to go back and talk to your parents. You've got to go back and talk to students. You've got to go back and talk to even the people who teach in your high school, to try to figure out why these barriers exist and what we might be able to do to move some of them. So we're going back to our commitment to stakeholder input and data analysis. And so we want our schools and districts to also adopt those two strategies. Now, we fully acknowledge that what you see on the screen here is a very small baby step, number one, in tackling a very big access and attainment issue that we face in Kentucky. But we are also very aware that awareness is the first key step, is that we have to get real about what our reality is before we can really make significant progress toward changing the current reality. All right, so there's the access and attainment audit. And the last thing I wanted to just quickly talk about is our EPSO toolkit. And so this was another request of our Commonwealth Education Continuum. We know that as a state agency, we just have to keep our eyes on the prize, and we have to keep supporting the people who are doing the actual work, the work that's closest to students around dual credit access and attainment. And so the CEC recommended that we create a toolkit for our for all early post-secondary opportunities. But right now, we're focused on developing resources related only to the dual credit opportunity. But we're starting with dual credit, and it will be a toolkit that's available to all of our practitioners. So this would be high school staff, higher education staff, community technical colleges, and centers, so that they can have access to dual credit resources that will help them to move barriers, like what they've identified in the audit that they've conducted. And so we have been working with our partner, the Education Strategy Group, to develop this toolkit, and our prototype for that does include these sections. Now, I just want you to know that this is just the beginning of this work. And so at a recent meeting, we added the financial aid and cost category to this list because it wasn't in the original prototype. So this is definitely a draft, and it's work in progress. But we know for sure that we need to include a section on programs, because every stakeholder needs to understand the difference between the different kinds of early college experiences that students can have. So we want to include some charts that differentiate between dual credit and advanced placement, for example, and some of the decision points that would help you determine which one of those would be best for you, depending on what your aspirations are and where you plan to attend college or where you plan to earn a credential. We'll have a section on partnerships because some of our districts especially struggle in establishing a partnership with an institution of higher education. Some of them are remote; they're not close to colleges or universities, and so we want to make sure that they know how to create that partnership, that they know the role of the high school, the role of the IHE, that we would even include rubrics or success criteria for what an effective partnership might look like, and maybe even include templates of memorandums of understanding or agreement that might be established. We know we need a section on advising and student supports. Maybe that would include checklists of how to enroll in a dual credit course, or what you must do in order to get there wherever you want, where you want to go. Maybe include some links for transfer guides by institution, so that if I go to this institution, this is how my dual credit course will count. Or even exemplars about wraparound services that can really lead to success for students who are enrolled in dual credit coursework. We need to support our districts and our IHEs on communications and outreach, messaging the importance and the value of early post-secondary opportunities to both students and families. Our stakeholder input has shown us without doubt that our families and our students, not all of them know about even what dual credit is, much less what a value it can be to them in their future. So we definitely want to support it in that area. We need data supports, like how do we share data about students? Because that's a really tricky business. When and how do we identify students who need additional support or early warning systems. And then finally, we need to make sure that students understand all of the financial implications of dual credit. What does it cost to take dual credit? And how do I make the most of this financial, if I'm taking advantage of a scholarship, how do I leverage that so that when I'm actually enrolled in a 4-year or 2-year institution, that I make the most of what I have? So our toolkit will be populated with all kinds of templates and local success stories and great ideas, we hope. Rubrics for evaluating local programs and different kinds of resources. And we're really grateful to our CEC work group, our early post-secondary work group. They're helping us to design and continue populating this really key resource. And so we know it'll be a living document. It will continue to change and morph over time, but we're really excited about what it might mean for our high schools and our institutions of higher education as they continue to do this work. Well, we've given you all a lot of information this afternoon, and I hope that you are understanding all of what's happening in Kentucky. But we'd love to take some time now to answer any questions you have or to hear from your experiences there in Hawaii.
Thank you so much, Robin and Amanda. Such great work. Again, please enter any of your questions in the chat box right now. We'll be happy to jump in live. But I was interested, how are you able to share some current resources that might be available? I'm not sure if it's available online. If you'd be willing to share it with our Hawaii folks.
So the resources currently. So there's a couple of things that are out. A lot of is in development, but the work around just the recommendations in the focus area is certainly online, and we would gladly share that if you reach out. So you don't have to navigate through a website of just the work of the Continuum and specifically the dual credit work. Our Kentucky Advising Academy is on social media, and they promote their webinars and their resources through Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So they're very easy to find. And so those are kind of where they are. All of our other materials that Robin really was talking about through the toolkit is really in development as we speak. We're hoping for early 2023 to release that, and we will do that publicly as well, because we certainly want to share the resources. And I know a lot of states and folks are in the same boat, really trying to enhance and improve the dual credit experience and access for more students.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. For those folks that might be still thinking of questions, again, please enter it in the chat. If not, if you're needing to leave us, we have about 10 minutes left of our session time. We would love for you guys to complete our anonymous survey before you leave us today. So it's great to provide our speakers some feedback about the great work that is being presented. So I'm going to go ahead and enter it into the chat box right now. And if you can spend some time, it's a very short survey. It'd be great to hear from you.
Lindsay, I'm going to share a last slide that
Sure.
we had to. If anybody wants to
Great.
take our contact information. Those are email addresses. If you want to reach out to either of us with questions about anything we've talked about today, we'll be happy to share. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda and Robin. We really appreciate it. We know it's pretty late for you in the evening back in Kentucky. So we hope you enjoy your weekend. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a wonderful, inspiring session. All the great work that we really aspire to do here in Hawaii. Again, if you can, please go ahead and complete our survey. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.